Hello and welcome to uh, another Sunday Superversive live stream. I am your host Ben Wheeler, and I'm here with my co-host Anthony Marchetta, and I'm here with Ken Dickason, a friend of the show. How are you guys doing today?
Doing quite well.
I'm good. How are you, Ken?
Doing all right. You, Anthony? Obviously, you're
Had
good.
a busy week.
Oh yes, it's been a busy week for all of us. I I basically worked on this show like for 16 hours, audio and verbal and writing edits and stuff like that. So, the show we're talking about is Pinkerton's Ghost. Link in the description down below. It is a horror anthology podcast every week or so. Every week on Friday around 6 p.m., you will receive a new story on this very channel. You'll receive a new horror story of grisly and frightening demeanor in all the best old schools of pulp, psychological, and character horror that you can imagine. I know my character starts out, he wanders into the forest on a mission from Control, which sends out to a mission to every Pinkerton, with paranormal Pinkerton specifically, within the area, and discovers strange strings holding up a man and making him walk as if he is being puppeted from afar. What could be causing it? And what secret lies in the dark heart of the woods? Find out on the episode below. Next week we have an episode starring Jim Donovan. That's Ken Dickason's character. Ken, give us a little taste.
Oh, well, Jim is a fascinating sort that's based out of Los Angeles, much like I myself am. And he is experimenting with some of the old, or not experimenting, but being haunted by some of the old ghosts of Los Angeles. Specifically, this big park that's right in the middle of this concrete jungle, called Griffith Park. So, what horrors await Jim? Well, you'll have to tune in Friday and find out.
And the week after that, Anthony Marchetta will be introducing us to Sean Russo. I'm still pronouncing that right, right? It's a hard R, hard U.
Yep,
There we
that's
go.
correct. Sean Russo
And
is the pronunciation. Half Irish, half Italian. New
all
Jersey.
fighting.
He's a New Jersey boy. Yep.
No, I'm kidding. Talk about your story, Anthony. Give him.
Sean Russo is a New Jersey boy, born and raised, and my story is going to be about a mysterious doorway opening in the heart of the New Jersey Pine Barrens, one of the most mysterious places in the entire country. Sean, who has some sort of connection to the Pine Barrens due to incidents that happened in his past, goes to investigate and finds that things are going on there that are larger than he initially anticipated.
Excellent. Of course, every episode is not just standalone. We do have overarching plots and narratives that will be introduced in time. uh, I think I need
It's
to.
a standalone complex.
Oh my goodness! It just went from like, yeah, euphoria, and then it's like, oh, I'm gonna slip my wrist.
It's like every Superversive stream.
Right? So Jack Morrow, my character, who's the introducing lead here, um, he uh, is kind of a rough and tumble sort. He more or less shoots towards whatever the control stated goal is, like a guided missile. Oftentimes he tangles with things beyond his kin and beyond his ability to fight, but with some liberal sources of fire and some stab wounds, he's kept alive for a bit longer than anyone anticipates. He's not the self-reflective sort, but even he's starting to feel a little bit strange. Uh, used to be, there weren't many paranormal Pinkertons running around the country, but there were enough that you could high five one or two on the way back from a mission. And now there's nothing but silence. Control hasn't spoken to him in weeks, and he's barely had any missions. Though he pushes those thoughts to the back of his mind, the man, again, is not self reflective. Instead, he hides, even if he doesn't really consciously think about it, from things that pursued him in his childhood, things that mean to use him for sinister gains. In the meantime, even as they try to track him down, for he doesn't even own his own house, he moves from motel to motel in an '03 Corolla Special that looks like death. And no, I'm kidding. Corolla '03 Corolla is just this drive smooth as silk, even after 18 years or so. But he goes around investigating what he's told to investigate. His adventures over the next few months are going to take him all up and down the country, from the Rocky Mountains to the west side of the east side of the Rocky Mountains, not the west side, around Utah, beautiful country if you've ever seen it, to the bayous in the double header white croc green sun, which I am absolutely looking forward to writing. Like I can't tell you guys enough how much I want to write that two-header. To the strange and mysterious depths of abandoned Masonic lodges deep in the Illinois cornfields, unattended but still quite inhabited. Jim, why don't you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about where Jim's going to go with his? Tell us a bit about Jim and his what you envision for the character.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if Jack is kind of the muscle, the meathead sort, Jim is kind of the he's actually a professional private detective. So he's got a little bit more of the professional background to investigating and figuring out mysteries and things of that nature. Even though his first mission is going to be involving a ghost, I figure a lot of Jim's stuff is going to focus on the West Coast. So a lot of it will be in Los Angeles area, but there'll also be quite a bit up in Oregon, Seattle, areas like that. I might even take him over to Alaska once or twice, just to get the whole breadth of the beautiful 49 continental states. Nobody's going to go. But I think it's also going to do a lot of stuff, since he's in Hawaii. A lot of his things are going to involve supernatural creatures that make deals, whether they be vampires, devils, or the Fae, which of course involves things like Shakespeare's Oberon and Titania, Mab, etc. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. I look forward to taking Jim to all kinds of unique places that and interesting supernatural fandoms that I've been toying around in my head for a while. Theories on how certain creatures could exist if they actually did. Yeah, that's about it.
Tell us a little bit about his past.
Oh yeah, well Jim. So everyone's got to have a hook, right? There's something to bring him in. Jim had a secret family tragedy befall his twin brother. And I don't want to give away too much yet, because, there's got to be a reason for you to tune in. But suffice to say, it's been enough to drastically change not only Jim's perception of the supernatural, but also his entire reason to exist, to do what he does, to pursue these mysteries, to solve, to help the innocent.
Excellent.
Yes.
Anthony, tell us a little bit about Sean and where you plan on taking him in his past.
Yes. The sorts of stories that I'm going to tell, I was very deliberate in setting Sean's first story in New Jersey. I do live in New Jersey, as I've mentioned on the show before, I'm sure. And
You
if
have.
I haven't, now you all know. It's a big secret's revealed.
Anthony, everyone from New Jersey always says they're from New Jersey. No one's surprised.
Well, the point being, the reason that I decided to place Sean in New Jersey as well was partially a right what you know thing, of course, because it just makes it, when you're trying to do this week in, week out, like we're going to be planning on, then that's important. But I think for me, anyway, it was more important that I always thought that New Jersey was a very interesting place where the view that other people have of the state is not the view that I have of it. New Jersey is a place with mountains, with farmland, with massive pine forests full of supernatural creatures, which is the weirdest one of all, with inner cities, shores. It has a little bit of everything and a lot of history. So, setting the stories and Sean's adventures mostly in the Garden State is definitely going to be intentional, but the goal will be to explore the length and breadth of the state in ways I think people wouldn't anticipate. Hence, episode 1 of Sean's story is set in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. For those who don't know it, the New Jersey Pine Barrens are one of those things where it's kind of amazing that they exist. They're literally a gigantic, like 2,000 square mile pine forest directly in the middle of the state of New Jersey. And they're full of supernatural creatures. You all might have heard of the New Jersey Devil because they named the hockey team after it. That's the most famous one, but it's not the only one. There's also like rumors of, hill people living in the depths of the forest who go uncounted by census. They have lots of really weird ecological phenomenon as well. Like, there are so many fires that happen in the Pine Barrens. Apparently, there are like little mini forests that are just considered a part of the landscape, these miniature forests, because they keep getting burnt down and regrowing, but never that high. And this is the setting of Sean's first story, deep into the bowels of the New Jersey Pine Barrens. And for future stories in Sean's adventure, I'm going to try and take him to inner cities, going to try and have him interact with some of the history of the state, including its Revolutionary War era roots. And I'm going to have him interact with the very surprisingly large number of supernatural phenomena that tend to take place within the state. New Jersey, there's an entire book series that was, I think, expanded afterward, but it's called Weird New Jersey because of all of the weird things that happen in New Jersey. And I think it was expanded for the entire country, but it was originally a New Jersey series. That was how it started. And it was mostly because of the Pine Barrens, I think. So, Sean, unlike the other two characters, I'm going to try and center Sean definitively within that tri-state area, but with an air of exploring the diversity of it, and diversity in the environmental sense.
Now, Anthony, I want to address something you mentioned. You said that New Jersey has mountains.
Yes, we do.
I'm looking at Wikipedia. Your highest peak is 1,800 feet. That is half as tall as the peak that's right outside my window that I walk every day.
We don't have high mountains, but we have a mountain range, which is the Appalachians.
I like to call them foothills, really.
All I know is somebody made a map of New Jersey, and where I live is considered like mountain people. If I can find that, I'll try and link it to you. But somebody literally made like a little thing with each section of New Jersey, and right around where I live was like mountain people.
Wow.
It's true though. We do not have the Rockies. What we have though are the Appalachians in the northern corner of the state.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's not a mountain like you would climb it for sport or anything like that. It's a mountain you would climb for recreation, I guess, and for hikers. It's definitely very popular with hikers. People who, have goals of hiking the Appalachian Mountains. It is certainly a foothill compared to the Rockies or something like that.
Well, I'm looking at the park, and it looks beautiful, especially the monument that's right there at the peak.
Which park are you looking at?
High Point? At the High Point Monument. It was basically just an obelisk, but still.
If you look up, there's a park about 5 minutes from my house. Like, when I say 5 minutes, I mean I can and have walked there. Thomas Stewart Park. And you get a view of mountains in the background of Thomas Stewart Park. So this is why we're called, like, mountain area. I think actually what I would be looking at aren't even the Appalachians. I think I would be looking at the Poconos, which are Pennsylvania mountain range. Since I live right on the border of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Yeah, unfortunately, it's hard for me to find a specific photo of it. I'll link it in our Discord.
Oh, okay. Is it a relatively small park, just kind of a private thing?
It's a small park, but with unbelievable views and relatively small. It's not like you mentioned Griffith Park. Nothing like that. It's a real, like, town park.
Gotcha.
Okay, I just put a link to an image of it when it was under construction in the general Discord. So if you want to look at it, but you could see that whole area. You could see that's actually a pretty good example of what I mean by this is in New Jersey. This park. So to give
Bing.
Yeah.
What was that?
Who uses Bing?
I literally click new tab and typed in the name of the park. I didn't even realize it was Bing. I don't even care.
I don't know if you're cool enough anymore, Anthony. I'm sorry.
You're out.
I'm sorry.
All right, I'll go now. I'm sorry. No. The park itself, though, this is actually a good example. You could see there's farmland there.
Just there's
a lot of trees.
thrown up an image on the screen if you guys are watching.
This was it when it was in construction. Now there's a walking path, and I can't find a modern image for whatever reason. But now there's a walking path. There's a trying to think of what else there was. Oh yeah, just a regular playground. There's like a sports field somewhere in there, but it's surrounded by farmland, and in the background you can see the mountain range that I think is the Poconos, which is technically Pennsylvania, but in New Jersey, at the very edge of it, you get the Appalachians. So that's what I mean by New Jersey is a very diverse area. If somebody said name New Jersey, you would probably think of like Newark first or something like that, or maybe if the Jersey Shore.
Oh, yes.
Or if you paid attention in school. If you paid attention in school and remembered the motto, you might think Garden State. Yeah, not a lot of people do anymore. The Garden State is down in Salem County, and we have all of this contained in what is a very small state. Point being, there's a lot going on in New Jersey that I wanted to hopefully show off a little bit, that there's a lot of that New Jersey is not exactly. It's not always the first thing that people think of.
Yeah, like New Jersey isn't really a state I think about too much, except to make fun of it.
Yes,
just because it is the Jersey Shore. It does all these things. Like there's people who without irony call themselves Pauly D and The Situation and Snooki.
Yeah, those people.
Right.
Hated the Jersey Shore. They're in the state itself. I can tell you that we view the Jersey Shore with like we have a very love-hate relationship, because on one hand you get people like you who quite correctly make fun of them, and the flip side of that though is they've probably brought more income to the Jersey Shore than anything in like the past 100 years.
Wow. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, they had enough cultural clout back in the day, but...
Oh, yeah.
They had so much cultural... They had so much impact on the Jersey Shore. They funded... they helped fund the rebuilding. After Hurricane Sandy, to give some credit to the cast of Jersey Shore, who I like. It's not even that I don't respect them so much as I don't care about them. But to give some credit where it's due, they actually did contribute a lot to the rebuilding of the Jersey Shore after Hurricane Sandy, and then after there was a fire that burned down a lot of the seaside boardwalk a couple years later. And they were big contributors to the rebuilding of the shore, and they do deserve a lot of credit for that. New Jersey beaches, again, that's another thing where like people have, the stereotype of the New Jersey beach, but we actually have, I think, some of the nicest beaches in the country. And I say that having been to Florida before and knowing how nice some of those some other beaches in the country are, but New Jersey has some beautiful beaches. And it's just a shame that our politicians ruined our state as badly as it did, because we have so much potential here, I think. But our politicians really just drove it into the ground.
It's appropriate that you mentioned Florida, because until I would say 2000, Jersey was the United States Florida.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we had the Hanging Chad incident, and all of a sudden we all started paying attention to Florida Man and all the glory he has brought us.
I remember back
Florida has its own issues.
It's true. I was remembering back when they were strategizing for the Area 51 raid. Florida Man was going to be the point. They were going to give him an absolute ton of meth, and then just point him in the direction of it. And he was really just a distraction for Kyle to punch a hole through the base's drywall, because his parents are going through a divorce, and he keeps chugging that monster. Poor guy, but he'll break through that concrete in no time with all that rage and monster in him. Which for me, like, talking like this and joking around is of course just interesting ideas. You're talking a lot about Jersey, and I can tell you like the state you live in. Missouri is fun, because it's simultaneously like the most level-headed and like the low-key most angriest state in the union. And like we're angry at each other, like, and Illinois, specifically Illinois or Kansas.
I have relatives in Illinois and Kansas. I can see why you'd be angry at them.
Right, and it's like Arkansas we just look down on. And even though we nearly had a war with Iowa, not even joking, like, we had lined up on both sides with like all the weapons we could gather, and like everyone just kind of looked at each other, and it's like, this is stupid. And they're like, yeah, here's the state border. Okay. And we all went home. Yeah, that's what was that war called? War between Missouri and Iowa. I think it was Iowa.
Wait, literally? Oh, wow.
Honey War. It was a bloodless territorial dispute in 1839 between Iowa, which was part of Wisconsin, and Missouri, which was a state at the time. Basically, we have a straight line in between our two states, give or take, except for where the Missouri River cuts across. Or Mississippi, excuse me. But basically, it was a whole bunch of taxes, which is, the American firebrand, I guess, and a whole bunch of misunderstandings. Basically, they got as far as
Des Moines, looks like.
Yeah, hold on a second.
Oh, no, wait. No.
I was trying to think of it. In the ranks found men armed with blunderbusses, flintlocks, and quaint old ancestral swords that had probably adorned the walls for many generations. One private carried a plow coulter over his shoulder by means of a log chain. Another had an old-fashioned sausage stuffer for a weapon, while a third shouldered a sheet iron sword about 6 feet long. And apparently this is the Iowans.
He was from Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, basically. It was over $46, by the way. No, I'm kidding. That's what the Missouri militia got paid for 7 days active service in total. Basically,
$46.
they basically sent
Nice.
like 11 dudes, and then there's like 100 Iowans or something stupid like that. And it was over taxes, and it was over the border. And eventually they're like, okay, let's just let Congress figure it out. And actually, the border they measured was so accurate. When we remeasured it in 2000 something, 2005, we actually found a lot of their survey markers. So it's kind of a wonder. Um, but then again, like half of the founding fathers were surveyors, like at least. Uh, you'd be surprised like how many important people up until like 1880 was like surveyor X who killed Indians on his with his bare hands and once shanked a bear to death or something stupid, which is amazing. Like I say stupid like that, but really I'm more saying I'm describing it stupid. In reality, these men were all tough as nails. Um, you wake up next to a campfire. 2020 internet election. What are you talking about, dude? You just woke up after a bear keel hauled you. It's like, ugh. Anyway, um,
Oh, I found the map, by the way.
ooh.
The New Jersey map, and it says Hill People, which is near to where I live. I don't know if I'm located in that exact spot. I'm uploading it on Discord.
Yep. So
you get the
yeah.
You
There
get
we
the
go.
sections of the state as like piney's everywhere, pretty much Alabama, swamps and toxic waste.
Yep.
Yeah.
See there's so much to that. There's
Lake House is owned by New Yorkers, which is very correct.
yeah. They
Yeah,
actually took
I'm
the
Hill
virus
People.
with
I
them.
could see my town. Yep.
Like it's one of the things that makes me angry is that you'd be like like in Missouri, especially Missouri, our virus came from New Yorkers fleeing New York. Like straight up, we had nothing, and then all of a sudden, a bunch of New Yorkers came through fleeing New York, and they basically they basically dragged it with them. It makes me angry, but it's not about that. We're not talking about that.
No.
One of the
With
things,
that said,
yeah,
the New Jersey was one of the two states, along with New York, to hit big with Corona. That's because of Bergen County, which is right on the border of New York and New Jersey, and all of the trying to think of how to put it. All of the rich people who, like you said, fled New York to New Jersey just infected Warren County and made it blow up. That and the fact that we have several really crowded cities, like horrible, terrible crowded cities, like Newark, Jersey City, uh, Patterson, Trenton. All of those places kind of blew up.
yep, and it's mm,
I have a love-hate relationship with my state. You mentioned that, like, it sounds like I really love the state, and I do. I love, I think that the state was ruined by politicians. I think there are just horrendous areas, and honestly, it's probably wise for me one day, just for tax reasons alone, to move out.
yep,
But I'll be sad to do it.
yeah,
It'll be a shame, but, they've just ruined it.
yeah. Like one of the things that's kind of hard for like the Midwestern territory is that there's like a lot less concentration. There's a whole bunch of things that you could apply just about anywhere for horror scenarios, but in reality, Missouri has quite a few like cryptids, especially the most famous one is the skunk ape. Um, but like compared to the sheer volume of the Pine Barrens, we've had a few aliens, a few this or that. Like my dad's claimed to have seen an alien, spaceship.
Yeah, you say that like slightly tongue in cheek, but you're actually not entirely wrong. Like if you look up the Pine Barrens and how many things
Anthony, Anthony, where'd you go? Oh well. Yep. There's and you got to be careful with like in
it's
writing.
kind of crazy.
Yeah. It's you got to kind of be careful to make sure that whatever you write is true to the environment. Like me in my second episode, I'm taking this guy, taking Jack Morrow to a cave. Uh, and of course, I can't write where he's in a forest or anything like that. I have to write a specific way in a specific style with a specific atmosphere to it. And if it's in Utah, it's going to be a different feel to it. Utah, like I've been through Montana. I did not understand the state motto of Big Sky Country until I went to Montana.
Okay.
That's the have you guys like thought about that motto or not motto descriptor for it?
Montana, Big Sky. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I can't say I've ever thought about Montana at all until just now.
Right.
Oh, it's a beautiful state, Anthony. You should go
it is.
sometime.
It is. Like it's like I took a 9,000, 10,000 mile road trip around the country. Like it is absolutely beautiful. If I wasn't
Big
living in
views.
Missouri, I'd live in the Northwest.
Oh, yeah. And if I were living in Los
I
Angeles,
will say that some of my episodes may end up taking place as well in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania area, since that is, I mentioned I live on the border of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. That's what's right over the border, the Lehigh Valley. And the Lehigh Valley I would characterize as, Coconut Mountains are near there, but there's a lot of history.
Mm-hmm.
So if I end up doing things related to the Revolutionary War, which I most definitely will, did you know that the last battle of the Revolution took place in the Pine Barrens,
I did not.
of all places?
Revolutionary Ghosts or something.
So
like
there you go. Yeah. So if I ever do something like that, I could also move into the Lehigh Valley area. Sean is somebody who like me, grew up in the state, comes from Catholic parents and family. So his background is similar to mine, which should help in writing his stories. Of course, it differs in various ways as well, and that's where he gets interesting.
Yep. Tell us a little bit more about Los Angeles, Jim. Ken.
Yes.
Where you like I was surprised by the sheer volume of ghost stories. Like the
Oh, yeah.
Appalachian Mountains, absolutely rich. Rocky
Mhm.
Mountains not as rich, but still it's got a certain taste to them. But like
Sure.
just the sheer volume in Los Angeles. Like I live near the Limp Mansion, I could walk to it, but your city is just wow.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Los Angeles has so much diversity, and we've got 10 million people. It absolutely makes sense that we'd have a lot of really interesting stories of things taking place. For instance, Griffith Park. This isn't the ghost story that I mentioned, but it's a Griffith ghost story. Was founded by a rich Spaniard or Mexican, I couldn't really figure it out, by the name of Don Francisco, and something like that I think it was. And he sets his will. He's dying, and then he decides he's going to give all this stuff not to his sister and niece who took care of him, but to some other guy. Well, the niece gets really upset about that. So she curses the father, she curses the guy that inherits, and she curses the lawyer, because everyone curses lawyers. It's what you should do. And then, to make it matters worse, she kills herself to seal the curse in blood. And now she haunts the Griffith Park forever, as does the ghosts of all the people that wound up dying through her curse, which, whether you believe that or not, a substantial portion of people seem to, because there are a lot of superstitious people in Los Angeles. There tends to be the entertainment industry attracts a lot of supernatural, or not supernatural, but superstitious people, because you kind of have to have something to give you hope that the randomness of acting and whatnot will eventually pay off. For instance, if you say to yourself, "Oh man, I really nailed that audition," you just know going into it you're not going to get the job. But if you say to yourself, that audition totally bombed, I failed, I'm absolutely going to get that job, you tend to, 9 times out of 10, it winds up working. It's an insane industry. But yeah, by the same token, I mean, you've got all the rest of history boiled up in Los Angeles. You not only do you have the entertainment industry, but you've got the Spanish missions from the 1800s. You've got the gold miners that, well, I don't think there were any gold mines in Los Angeles itself, but relatively near here. You got some Wild West stuff that you can play around with. You got all kinds of stuff out here. Just because our state is newer than your guys's doesn't mean it doesn't have a rich and corrupt history that you can play around with.
I would never accuse LA of not being corrupt.
I don't think anybody with a brain would ever accuse LA of corrupt. And I'm from Oregon, so the state that I'm actually enjoy tends to have fewer ghost stories, but a lot of all of our supernatural stuff tends to be Native American legends. Like we've got Wendigos, we've got Sasquatch. We do have ghost stories also, but they're more like local stuff that the average people have never heard of. Like my university, I went to Oregon State University, big campus for Oregon. And there were just like 3 or 4 different ghost stories of people that died or committed suicide in horrible, tragic circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wealth of opportunity.
Oh yeah, and like the thing is that even though your state was young, accepted into the union, that does not mean it didn't have a history way back before then. Like Missouri and Illinois boast some of the largest, Indian like the Cahokia Mounds, that sort of thing. But like California had its own like non-plains, like almost not seafaring, but like fisherman style, but also like you had plains, and then you had the Rockies, you had Catholic missions, you had, well, I don't want to steal your thunder.
Oh no, not at all. I actually haven't played too much with Amerindian myth and stuff for just yet, because I figure that's going to be a lot more. I don't want to step on your and Anthony's territory with that.
It's not so much where we step on each other's territory or anything like that. It's more about what we have to offer within our territory. Like,
right.
Anthony has a very concentrated area with the Pine Barrens. I have a very dispersed area, and each one is its own little flavor that I have to hit just right. But you have this kind of, I don't know, it's the in between. It's a certain culture that variates between as far north as you go and south as you go, depending on how much Spaniards or Hispanics are running around. To how much history there's been in there.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, we could even go as deep as Mexico if we wanted to, I guess. And play with the chupacabra a little bit.
Yep.
Bring up some Aztec myths.
Ooh,
I know, right?
Oh, dude, your territory does have most of the sightings for the City of Gold, El Dorado.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I definitely thought about playing with that one. I don't give away too much where I'm going with that, but
of course.
Partly it's because I haven't quite thought about all I've thought about yet.
Right, like I went through with the writing stuff, and I've already got like all 12 of my first episodes written down, basically what I want. And it goes from anywhere between seems magic but actually mundane to straight up like ghosts wandering around and all kinds of weird stuff happening that excuse me, pardon me, happening that you can play with. It's not that we're locked into things. Like maybe we have too many ghost stories right now. Maybe the next couple for you guys are I might ban ghost stories because we have
ghost stories for a while yet.
Yeah. Because it's you want some variety, and not only that, it's how you use the monster.
Exactly. Look, we're trying to find some terror here. We don't necessarily need to find ethereal ghost creatures to be scary. There's
Oh,
so much
absolutely.
out there.
Yep.
And
Honestly.
plus, I can also play with, because of my area, I can also play with, Japanese or Chinese myths coming over the sea because there's a huge Asian population in California and Seattle as well.
Yep. Oh yeah. There's been already plenty of great stories where it's something from Japan crosses over,
Right.
or the Chinese immigrants have like um their sheer basically they reach critical mass. I want to
Right.
say, and something happens. It's like, oh, so many good things, so much horror, so little time.
Well, it's kind of like Neil Gaiman's American Gods, where people bring their mythology with them. Only in that book, of course, it was literal, actually came with them.
Hmm.
I figure play with that a little bit. Should be fun.
I've never read American Gods.
It was a book.
That's my impression of everything I've read by Gaiman.
I would call
I
it.
don't think there's an author that's more overrated than Neil Gaiman.
See,
Oh, now we're sitting fire.
so
I
like
don't think he's bad. I just don't think that there's like anything remotely special about him.
he's so like there's an element of like the ability of an author to bring their dreams into reality as their art form, and he's very good at that. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean they're like the best thing ever, but he can do it. Probably the best thing by him is, I can't remember what it's called, but it's about a knight it's about a woman that finds the Holy Grail in a discount shop. And so she buys it, and a knight just shows up. And so she has the knight like run up and down the house cleaning things for her because, she'd like, yeah, I'll just give it to you. No, I have to earn it. Okay.
That sounds very, very Neil Gaiman. I, I'm not a huge fan of, I'm not a huge fan of Neil Gaiman, but I'm not a hater. I read his book Stardust. I saw the movie, which was a movie with good points, but also had Ricky Gervais in it, so wash.
Ricky Gervais is great these days.
He was horrendous in this movie. Like it was actually painful. I almost turned it off every time he spoke. It had nothing. I didn't even have a hatred of Ricky Gervais before the movie. I developed it in the movie. He was aggressively anti-funny.
Yeah, I don't understand Ricky Gervais because the liberals will say they hate him, but then they invite him to everything.
And what else was there in the movie that was bad? Robert De Niro was in it, and he played a gay pirate, and it was just terrible. But it had good
Yeah.
points as well. The book seemed to me to be a good effort with some misguided aspects of it. His idea was, I want to make a fairy tale for adults, like they used to do in the old days. But his idea for adults seemed very juvenile. Like literally, he seemed to have this idea of add sex and add cursing. So that it starts off with a graphic sex scene, and the main love interest drops an F-bomb at one point once in the story for no reason except that it jacks the rating from PG-13 to R when the movies. I don't know.
Well, technically, you can curse. You can use the F word once in a movie without it changing your rating from PG-13.
Well, there you go. It's still PG-13.
Yeah.
So he has a very graphic sex scene at the beginning that could have been completely excised, and it probably would have improved the story. And yet, like, the flip side of that is there are sections of it that are really, really great. Like when the main character, if for people who don't know Stardust, it's about the main character goes into the fairy world to find a falling star that he can bring to his beloved so that she will marry him. And first off, just that premise alone is immediately great. I love the premise. And I love the scene where he pledges himself to name's Victoria, I think, the girl he's in love with at the beginning.
Right.
They said he goes on his knees in the mud and doffs his bowler cap and says, "Then for your hand in marriage, I shall find a star." And the whole scene is very classical and very, old school fairy tale with just the right amount of humor to it, to make it work particularly well. And then you just have stuff like the graphic sex scenes and dropping the F-bomb because it's an adult book, so he's got to try and make it an adult. And I kind of got the impression, I read something from him where he said he was frustrated. He had to go somewhere, and apparently, he had to give some sort of speech on fairy tales, but he thought that the people who invited him didn't take fairy tales seriously. So, to get them to take it seriously, he wrote a version of the Snow White story from the perspective of the evil queen. But he made her the good guy, and then he says that the real issue was that she didn't go far enough. And I read that whole thing, and I'm like, this is supposed to be him defending fairy tales, but what I'm reading here is him saying that he doesn't think that the fairy tale Snow White is actually that great, and he could write a better version, and in the better version, good is evil and evil is good. So, that's not really a defense of Snow White, is it?
So basically, he was at time with. Oh, sorry, go for it.
No, go for it, Ken, and then I'll make a comment.
I was going to say, so basically, he was ahead of his time with the rise of Wikipedia.
He was, and then I learned later that he wrote some terrible woke feminist thing with Sleeping Beauty. I didn't even read it. I just read the plot summary, and my eyes rolled out of the back of my head, and now I'm blind.
Bar, I want to give a shout out to our.
Terrible.
I want to give a shout out to our boy, Bar One Studios. How you doing there, bro?
Thanks for tuning in.
Oh yeah, thank you. I don't know. I said that weird. I can't.
Yes, you did.
Like I've been up since 4:30, and then I worked out after 9 hours of work, and all horrible things. Anyway, he says. Right. He says there's not a lot in Neil Gaiman's bag of tricks overall. He's a literary Tim Burton. If you like the one thing he does, which is subvert fairy tales, at least that's what I think, you really like it every time he does it. The problem
I've liked other stuff by Gaiman, I will say that.
Yeah.
I have liked other things by him. I liked A Study in Emerald, which was his Lovecraftian take on Sherlock Holmes. The thing is, it's a good example of why I think he's overrated as an author, because A Study in Emerald was good because it was clever, kind of funny. I liked the twist. I liked the style of it, but there was no substance to it whatsoever. And it worked because it wasn't trying to have substance. So, it gave you exactly what you came for. But it wasn't deep. It didn't tell, it didn't say anything interesting. It was just a fun little story. And similarly, he had a thing, Marvel 1812, I think, or Marvel 1816. Yeah. And it was an alternate history take on, what if the Marvel heroes came in the early 1800s or whatever, instead of 16. Thank you, not 18, 16. It's a very big difference. So anyway, 1620. Marvel 1620. It was like, what if they came in the early 1600s instead of in the modern day? And I think that's a great concept for a story, and I greatly enjoyed the story, but he also had to drop stuff in there that just kind of ruined it. Like, he makes Jean Grey disguise herself as a boy and Cyclops is gay or something, but it was written in a way that was incredibly modern, didn't work at all, and for something that I had otherwise greatly enjoyed, it kind of ruined it for me. Because I'm like, this, besides the fact, leaving aside any issues with changing characters to gay or whatever, this just doesn't work in this world at all. It totally falls apart.
I'm looking at his Wikipedia bibliography, and I'm surprised. I thought he had written more than this. Apparently, he's done a lot of comics, which I don't read comics. But
I've heard his comics are the best thing that he does, and I've only read 1620, I think, which I think was by him. I could be wrong even, but I thought that was by him. Sandman is considered one of the great comics.
Yeah, that's what I've heard of. Everyone says that's his best, which, once again, I don't read comics, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
I tried reading Sandman and got bored quickly.
Yeah, the thing about like subverters like that is that eventually they run out of tricks and they don't have anywhere to go. And that's why Neil Gaiman honestly isn't as culturally relevant as he was 10 to 20 years ago. Or 5 to
Gaiman
20.
reminds me a lot of Ursula Le Guin when he writes about fiction or about fairy tales, nonfiction wise. Sometimes he could say things that are very insightful or interesting, but when he actually tries to do it himself, I'm never as impressed as I feel like I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Le Guin is the same way. Like, she has an essay that I remember Tom Simon quoted and called one of the great seminal essays in fantasy, From Elfland to Poughkeepsie, which is about language in fantasy. And I've read the essay myself after Tom Simon recommended it. And it is a brilliant essay. It's an absolutely fantastic essay. It's a must-read for fantasy writers. But whenever I've actually tried to read Le Guin myself, I've always felt as if I should like her more than I actually do, but she's never impressed me particularly.
So the way I view, like how Neil Gaiman is a
Especially
subverter.
at, you have disastrous stories like Omelot.
Well, she wrote Ursi. That was her big thing, and that's really
Yeah.
what put her on the map. Like she does know her craft. Like at no point did I say she is not a bad craft writer. The problem is that the stories that she wanted to tell were, I want to say, the first relevant of their kind. I've been thinking about like literary history, and it's like Lovecraft was not the first Lovecraftian writer.
Right.
Clark Ashton Smith, I want to say, was before him, and a few others. Lord Dunsany as well is tap dances along that boundary between absolutely insane fairy tale and Lovecraftian horror, and there's a thin line between those. They're like next door neighbors, same street,
Sure.
same end goal. But Ursula K. Le Guin, she had the magic school, where it was more than just weird wizards apprenticing each other and then murdering each other. She changed the language on dragons, which up until when she published Ursi in the 1980s, 1970s, somewhere in there. I think 1970s. That feels right in my head.
Sure. Why not?
It was dominated by Tolkien and Tolkien's dragons as allegory. All right.
Land dealt with Lovecraftian horrors.
Very much.
It was not Lovecraft. It was riffing off of course, William Hope Hodgson's Awake in the Nightland, who was a fine horror writer in his own right.
I'm back.
Except for Awake in the Night.
Oh,
Ben,
okay.
you're alive.
So, sorry, it feels like we skipped some things.
We did, yes.
When did I cut off?
You cut out. You were talking about Ursula Le Guin, and you were mentioning. I think the last thing I remember was you were talking about Earthsea being published as the end of the Tolkien dragon mythos being parody or not parody, allegory for sin and debauchery.
Okay.
And then you cut off.
Demons. Okay. So she did that. She did the magic school. And basically, she did it first, and she did it best, and she did it better than anyone else at the time, if anyone else was even doing it. So, what were you guys talking about?
Oh, I was asking. We were waiting for you to come back, so I was asking Anthony, since you had made mention of Lovecraft. I was seeing if he was going to bring any Lovecraft horror to his shop.
Yeah, I said I'm not planning on it. And the reason that I'm not planning on it is that I've almost never seen anybody take on Lovecraft who's not Lovecraft and actually understand him. I mentioned that the only one I could think of off the top of my head is John C. Wright, who was technically riffing off of William Hope Hodgson, who was a good horror writer in his own right, but he got the idea, I think, behind like the Lovecraftian horrors down pretty well.
Yep.
I think the point of Awake in the Nightland, like, most people want to find a way for the characters to fight against the Lovecraftian horrors, which is understandable and entirely wrong-headed. John C. Wright is the only person that I have seen who came up with a way for his characters, in a sense, to sort of fight back against the Lovecraftian horrors in a way that preserves their intent.
Absolutely.
Right.
I don't think anybody else has ever been able to do it, and this unfortunately leads to a lot of modern Lovecraftian fiction either missing the point or being kind of samey. But you'll see it a lot. I remember in Castalia, they're complaining about like people, you know, like you don't understand. It's not about they're not evil, they hate you, like all sorts of things like that. Now, John C. Wright, I think that you could say in the Nightland books, the one difference between the creatures of the Nightland versus the creatures of Lovecraft, or at least depending on the creatures, but from the popular perception, is that the creatures of the Nightland actively hate humanity, whereas the horror of Lovecraft is that they are completely indifferent and don't care if we live or die. And
Right.
it's supposed to be like this realization, you know, drives men mad. John C. Wright posits, I actually think it would be worse if they knew about us and specifically meant us harm.
Yep.
You know, pick your poison.
Yep.
But I still think he gets the feel of it very well. And he gets the idea that, you know, for humanity to fight it, you need to ally yourself with something, with a creature as far beyond beyond us as those Lovecraftian monsters are, only on our side, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with you. The fact that the night.
Hence, I do not intend to bring in Lovecraft, but I'm not against it, and you know, automatically. It's just really, really difficult.
There's a difference between bringing in elements of his horror and like trying to crib what he
We lost Ben
is.
again.
What? No, I'm here.
You're back. Sorry.
Okay. No, I just wasn't.
You
saying
cut out
anything.
mid-sentence, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, usually my internet is rock solid, and today it is just not. But that's okay.
Sure.
So what was I saying? There's a difference between cribbing him and taking bits and pieces from it. Like taking, say, A Hound of Tyndalos, or Lovecraft's works on dreams in the Dreamland, or you know the like things like Hotep, which is basically Satan, except you know also throws madness in the mix of trying to draw you into a downward spiral. Um, you know, and there's elements of aesthetic that he did very well that you could take as also. As far as you know, being creative director, I am going to sternly admonish you both and myself at the same time that absolutely nothing is off the table. So don't limit yourselves with what you've got. Like you need to have a limited story, right? But like I'm gonna have Jack Morrow bounce from ghosts and not ghosts, excuse me, monster in the Missouri forest to cave happenings in Utah, which is you know just outside your territory. There was another Pinkerton in that territory who's since gone missing. How strange. And then eventually he's gonna jump down to Arkansas, to the bayou, to whatever. It doesn't like we are at a buffet. All things are ours to consume. Yeah.
Well, I have been listening. Go ahead, Ken.
I was going to say that's the beauty of America's wide options when it comes to mythology and legend. We can play with so much of this stuff.
Oh yeah. Like
I have been listening to the musical Hadestown, so you better believe that at some point or another, Sean is going to be marching into the underworld to bring somebody back from the dead.
Oh, absolutely.
Since you're based out of New Jersey, I'm not the least bit surprised that you will be having some sort of musical connotation. That does not surprise me.
It's going to happen.
Right. He's traveling down the hell, gets bumped by a ghost. Hey, I'm walking here. What's you doing?
Hey, what's the matter, yo?
Hey, bada bing.
His spirit guide is gonna be who was the actor who played?
No,
could be him, but who was the actor who played Tony Soprano who died? I can't remember his name. You know, I have.
We're all googling it. Yeah.
Here's a very New Jersey story. here is an extremely New Jersey story. So, where my dad grew up, the house that he grew up, that my grandmother lived in, and I visited all the time. James Gandolfini, by the way.
Yeah, that was it. Yep.
Anyway, he had right down the road from that house was a pizza place called Lodi Pizza. The town is Lodi, New Jersey. Really small, really small town. You know, close to New York City, right? Very urban, all of that fun stuff. And there was a pizza place literally down the road. You know, I used to walk there when we visited if we got pizza. My dad is friends with the owner of the pizza place, whose name is also Anthony, by the way, because everybody in every Italian has at least
Hey,
one
Tony.
person in their family named Frank and Anthony.
Of course.
And we would go down there. He has pictures in that shop of him with like the cast of The Sopranos, because The Sopranos actually filmed an episode in Lodi Pizza. And it was like a big deal, for them. They got pictures up all over the restaurant. This is like a tiny hole in the wall pizza place, you know, very stereotypical in that sense. So that's my connection with James Gandolfini, which is I don't have one, but friends of my dad's do,
Right.
and that's something. I feel like though it's a very New Jersey and very Italian thing to be like, oh yeah, my dad's childhood friend owns a pizza place down the road from him. His name's Anthony, and The Sopranos filmed there. Everything about it seems to just scream New Jersey.
You just need a
There you go.
shirtless Pauly D show up. It's like, wait, you're my spirit guide? Yeah, man. Hey.
Yes. Now, just the
Holy
situation.
crap! I'm doing that. I'm doing it. It's happening, and you
just-
can't stop. You can't stop me. I don't care how bad of an
you
idea
better.
it is.
That's a
No,
perfect.
I
no,
don't care how bad of an idea this is. It's happening. You can't stop me.
No, it's not a bad idea at all. And we don't want to stop you. We want to encourage you
Yes.
so that we can have something to make fun of.
Yes.
All right. So here's what it's gonna be. Pauly D will be a spirit guide because he will have recently died, but by the end of the episode, he will have brought him back, and nobody will know he'll have died. So it'll just be in the paper the next day that there was like, you know, heart attack scare, miraculous recovery with Pauly D.
No, here's how you make it really funny. There's a dead body of Pauly D lying around, and when he breached from Hades to the mortal world again, he got a new body. So the
Because
second
he's Pauly D, of course.
Right. So the second half of the episode is you and Pauly D disposing of Pauly D's body. That's how you
Yes.
take it to 11. That is the solid ceiling now. If the script doesn't reach this bare minimum, I'm saying no.
Rewrite.
This is happening. There's going to be a story. I don't know any of the context. I don't know why they would be doing this. I don't know where the entrance to the underworld is. All I know is Sean is going to go down to Hades, and Pauly D is going to be a spirit guide. He will be revived by the end of the episode, and it will end with them trying to hide his body in the Pine Barrens.
Literally none of our American viewers will be surprised to learn that the gate to Hades is in New Jersey.
Absolutely. Atlantic
One
City
of
is in New
several.
Jersey, right?
Percy Jackson had the gate to Hades in L.A.
I mean,
if I
no one's
remember,
surprised about that
which,
one either. I never read the book.
Same.
I like the Percy Jackson series. It's a good series,
Anthony,
but whatever.
Anthony, I'm 34. I have not.
Yeah,
read
I know.
Percy
It used to be extremely popular. Then
It
it
was.
came out with a pretty terrible movie. I was one of those people who was a fan of Greek mythology before Percy Jackson came out and liked it for that reason. But I
You
did get a lot of people into Greek mythology. I was a Greek mythology hipster. But yeah, point being, they had hell set in Los Angeles, and I do remember quite well Rick Riordan, who's the author, his portrayal of Los Angeles as being sort of like a mutant, evil version of New York.
I mean, that's pretty accurate.
I mean, he mentions it as like New York is organized very, it's organized by grid, and if you know how it works, you could generally find your way around. But LA doesn't work like that at all. That it's extremely easy to get lost, and there's like no organization to the streets.
My neighbor from my next door neighbor, who's is East Coast, said that the difference between New York and Los Angeles is in New York, everyone hates you, and in Los Angeles, nobody cares about you. So it really depends on what you'd rather be. Just have that constant feeling of everyone wishing you ill, or just no one wanting anything to do with you, and just avoiding
Yeah,
every eyesight possible chance that you have to
one thing
interact.
that you learn if you're driving in New York pretty quickly, and I have not been the driver, but I've been to New York several times, is that people will honk at you a lot. And if you're going to get mad about this, just don't go, because like there's no point. Honestly, like the way I think of it, you know what? It means that I'm probably not, they're trying to make it less likely I crash into them or whatever. Just let them honk. The streets, I don't know what the streets of LA are like, but the streets of New York are wall-to-wall traffic 24/7.
Actually, because LA is so much bigger than New York and spread out over so much larger space, the highways are pretty busy, like constantly busy. And downtown Los Angeles is stupid busy during certain hours of the day. But there's more of an area for the cars to go out. But
To be
also, New
fair,
York
I'm
has the
thinking
public
of
transit.
Manhattan.
Sure.
I'm referring specifically to Manhattan. I'm sure that some of the boroughs like Queens and whatever, they have areas that are basically just suburbs, and I'm sure they're perfectly fine. But Manhattan is just constant wall-to-wall traffic.
Right. Well, also, New York has a public transit system, whereas LA, I mean, it tries to have public transit, but it can't work.
The New York subway system is one thing that I will never ever
You'll
for
never ever
way
what?
too many. I will never use the New York subway system. There's way too many horror stories.
Mm.
It's a terrible, terrible place.
So
It was also not sanitized at all, like during COVID until like several weeks into the infection.
no,
Then they're just
months.
like, so
Months.
was it months?
It was
Well,
months.
I remember when it hit when like it really hit big in New York. Suddenly one day, like an announcement came out where they said like sanitizing. They started sanitizing it every night, and every comment was, "Wait a minute, they weren't doing this. Like they were just running the subways and not cleaning them." And the fact is, like, you'd think they would be doing that whether there was a pandemic or not, wouldn't you? Seems pretty straightforward. Clean your shit.
Yeah, like I mean, like it's funny. So like you guys have to work out some sort of like casual comedy episode where it's like serious business, but it's also like intrinsically funny as hell. Like
Oh,
for
yeah.
Jack
Like
Morrow,
Pauly D.
exactly. Jack Morrow, I'm
There
gonna.
you go.
Well, you could just have him. You could just have Sean try to hit a shop in New York. That's it. Like he goes into the transit system. He sees the horror of man. I have Jack.
I
This is
mean, the New York subway leading to the underworld makes a lot of sense.
it
We've
does,
already established it's got to be Jersey.
but in
I
Jersey,
don't know about that.
it's like you fall
New
asleep.
York, the city is pretty horrible. I hate New York City. I'm gonna be straight up front about it. I hate visiting. I hate walking in the city. I hate looking at the city. It's ugly. It's crowded. It's incredibly expensive.
Yep.
It's never fun to It's never fun to visit. I've gone to the city before because I have specific things to do there. If I have tickets to a show or tickets to a sports game, whichever Yankees or something like that, then I will go to the city. I will
Right.
not go to the city if it's just, I know people just kind of like going to visit, and I don't get it. I do not get it at all because it's always a miserable experience.
Well, there goes 23 million potential viewers.
Right. Oh no, New York
It's
City's
like they don't
crumbling
know that
apart.
they hate. Yeah, like they don't know. They all know.
The what was I gonna say? I don't plan on having many big city stories with Jack Morrow, just because it's just not something I really do with. Partly because like St. Louis is a big city I lived in all the time, and it's like, yeah, what's the horror? For like a good period of time in my childhood, I heard a gunshot every night, sometimes multiple ones. Like it's like, you know, the big city feel is basically night and gunfire and being stuck in your homes, you know, if you don't have any friends you know, in the area. Like it's just all kinds of bad. Like you can do like there's plenty of good horror stories in St. Louis. The Limp Mansion is a big one. There's all kinds of things about our sewers, and I might give it to another character, a guest character, which
Ooh.
you guys might discover on Halloween. But that's in the future. Um, where how do I want to put it? Where it's like you can have these big city feels, but like most writers they get caught up in the feel and glamour of the city, but not necessarily the whole picture, which is it's dirty, there's homeless people everywhere, and
Sure.
you know there's no good parking. You know, and then like you know there's parts of the St. Louis cave system, and yeah, St. Louis has a cave system where the police just don't go because there's murderous hobos. Um,
Oh, sure.
you know, like there's all kinds of things in cities and sewers and all that jazz where they're just like, yeah, you know, don't go down there. Enter at
That's
your own
right.
risk. Like Kansas
Nothing good
City,
happens there.
right? Kansas City turned theirs into their caves. Missouri is riddled with caves.
Mm,
Caves into their own little like business district, uh,
sure.
crime district, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes.
I like
Hmm.
it. And since I know absolutely nothing about Missouri, it's when I was little, we lived in Mississippi, and then after Dad retired from the Navy, we took a road trip across the country to go to Oregon. We saw almost every state in between, but I do not recall Missouri. So I'm very curious to find out all there is to know about Missouri's past and history and the fun stuff from there. From your point of view, I don't really want to watch like a documentary or anything, or heaven forbid, read a book,
Right. No,
or
it's
even worse, go to visit.
right. You can visit Missouri. The humidity's murder, but otherwise it's all right. I'm not saying that it's abusive relationship with the weather, but it gets abusive sometimes. It gets a little bit, you know. But then it's like, oh, there's those days where it's just perfect. But then there are
I do
those,
like to have abusive relationships with our states that we're based out of.
yeah, basically. Mm. Ah, well, I'm pretty happy that this is all together. The first episode has been a success, and next week, Jim Donovan is gonna strut his stuff with a
That's right.
fantastic LA Ghost story.
Oh,
Then
thank you.
after that, it'll be Sean Russo with a strange tale. I almost said queer tale, but it's like, oh wait, that word isn't used for that anymore.
That's right.
A strange tale.
It's a tragedy.
I know, right? Like, there's so many words I want to use that I just can't use.
Uh, Language
Anyway,
evolves.
right.
Tragedy.
Uh, in the New Jersey Pine Barrens, and then for September, the end of September, I'll be back with Jack Morrow, with a cave diving expedition.
Ooh, so you are going. Your next story is in the cave. So you were just talking about that cave system.
No, not in Missouri. That's gonna be Halloween.
Oh,
I'll be bringing on a mystery uh, writer who is quite excellent with a detective thingamabob voice. It's good.
yes.
Really?
Like
I
honestly,
don't know who, so I'm curious.
well, that's because you're never on voice chat with us, Anthony. But
I know.
But there's he
Say
actually
share a room.
right. So trying to think. His work in the Soul Anthology, which I edited, like literally a month after the worst week of my life, which was 2020, like January 15th to 22nd or so. Basically, I said, Soul Anthology needs to be done soon. So I basically got it done in less than a month while I was getting a new job. And it's like, yeah, all right, I feel pretty good about this. Immediate mood change. And then they closed the gyms, and my mood.
Oh man, the lack of has been brutal.
Oh, it's been wild. Anyway,
I've lost so much.
you've right. I was using filled. I work at a gas station, and I was using full coffee pots as kettlebells.
Oh, there you go.
Right. Oh well.
Why not?
Right. But now I'm actually exercising, and I was doing that before I came here. So, guys, I want to thank you all for your support. I want to give a big thank you to Anthony Marchetta and Ken Dickason for working with me on this. You know, you guys are fantastic, and I'll be happy to work with you guys in the future. You know, look forward to what we're producing this month. Look forward to our special Halloween episode. Like honestly, this guy, you know, I'll reveal him later, and we're gonna come on here and probably chat. Um, is solidly one of the unsung rising stars of science fiction going on, and I really do want him to write detective fiction sometime in the future. Like solid,
Yeah.
he has the voice perfect.
I have an idea of who it is, so let's see.
Mm-hmm.
I'll guess later.
Yep. All right. Well, I'll see you guys later. I want to thank you to our listeners as well. Do check out Pinkerton's Ghosts. It's in the description below. And to those who have just fallen upon us by chance, give us a shot. Have a good one.